The desert was silent. Only the wind moved across the empty land. The human explorer walked slowly, his boots pressing into the red dust of the alien planet. His name was Daniel. He was alone, far from his ship, carrying only a scanner and a small pack of supplies. Daniel had been searching for life. Command told him the planet was empty, but his scanner showed weak signals in this area. It could be nothing, just broken metal or old machines. But he felt something else, a strange pull as if the land itself was watching him. He walked between black rocks that looked like broken teeth. The sky above was purple, with two suns fading into the horizon. The light made long shadows that moved like ghosts. Daniel touched the side of his helmet, checking his oxygen levels. Still safe, still enough time, then he heard it, a sound. Very soft, not wind, not rock, it was almost like breathing. Daniel froze. He held his breath and listened. Again, there it was. A weak sound like someone in pain. He lifted his scanner, turning toward the noise. The signal on the screen jumped. Something alive. He moved closer, step by step, his hand near his weapon. The sound grew stronger. A low cry, a whisper of life. And then he saw her. Half hidden under a broken metal wing, an alien girl lay curled on the ground. Her skin was pale blue, her hair silver like cold fire. She looked small, fragile, almost human, but her eyes were larger, glowing faintly in the dim light. She was breathing hard, her chest rising weakly. Daniel's heart jumped. He had been told aliens were enemies, dangerous. But this girl did not look dangerous. She looked broken. Her arms were thin and her clothes were torn, burned at the edges. Around her neck was something strange, a collar, black and silver with tiny lights blinking on it. It hummed softly like it had its own heartbeat. Daniel stepped closer. The alien girl opened her eyes. They were deep violet, filled with fear. She tried to move back, but she was too weak. Her hand lifted only a little, covering the collar on her neck as if to protect it. Daniel raised his hand slowly. "It's okay," he whispered, even though he knew she could not understand his words. His voice was soft, careful, like speaking to a wounded bird. The girl shook her head, her lips parting as if to speak. But no words came out, only a broken sound, almost like a sob. Daniel looked around. The crashed metal behind her was part of a small ship. Smoke still rose from it, thin and gray. It had crashed hard. No one else was here. She was alone. He crouched low, trying not to frighten her. "Are you hurt?" he asked gently. He pointed to her leg, which was bleeding from a deep cut. She followed his hand with her eyes, but did not answer. Her hand pressed the collar tighter against her neck. Daniel frowned. Why would she protect that? What was it? Some kind of device? A weapon, or maybe a prison? He took out his scanner and aimed it at the collar. The screen flickered with strange symbols, lines of code he did not recognize. Energy. Strong. Alive. Not just metal. The girl's eyes widened and she shook her head again. She tried to reach out, pushing his scanner away, but she was too weak. Her hand dropped, trembling. Daniel felt something stir inside him. Pity, fear, curiosity, all at once. He looked at her again. She was not like the stories they told back at base. Not a monster. Not a soldier. Just a girl, alone, injured, afraid. He wanted to help her, but he also felt danger in that collar. It was not just decoration. It held a secret. The wind blew harder, throwing dust across the rocks. Daniel glanced at the horizon. The two suns were almost gone. Night would come soon, and this planet's night was dangerous. He had to decide. Leave her here to die or take the risk of helping. The girl's eyes locked on his. For a moment, silence passed between them. Her lips moved again, and this time a sound came out. A single word, broken and soft. He did not understand the language, but the tone was clear. A plea. Daniel's chest tightened. He stepped closer, ignoring the warnings from his training. He reached out his hand slowly. The girl hesitated, then let her fingers brush his glove. Her skin was cold, shaking. The collar blinked once, brighter. For a second, Daniel thought he heard something, like a whisper of voices far away, hidden in the air. Then it was gone. Daniel pulled his hand back, breathing hard. What was this thing around her neck? Why did it feel alive? The girl closed her eyes, holding the collar again. A tear slid down her cheek, glowing faintly in the strange light. Daniel stared at her, his mind racing. He did not know why, but in that moment he understood something. This meeting was not an accident. This girl, this collar, this secret, it was meant to be found, And it had found him. The desert was silent again. But Daniel's heart was loud. The strange encounter had just begun. The alien girl lay weak on the ground, her glowing violet eyes never leaving Daniel's face. She was breathing hard, every breath sharp and painful, but she held her collar with all her strength, as if it was the last thing she had in this world. Daniel crouched closer, his scanner still in his hand. He wanted to know more. He wanted to understand what this strange device around her neck was, but the way she protected it made him pause. It was not just metal to her, it was something precious, maybe even sacred. The girl's lips moved. A soft sound came out, not words he knew, only broken whispers. Her voice was thin, like wind brushing against stone. Daniel leaned closer. "I can't understand you," he said slowly, almost whispering. "But I want to help." The girl blinked. For a moment, he thought she recognized his tone, if not his words. She reached her hand out weakly, not toward him, but toward the sky, toward the stars above. Then her arm fell back down, too heavy for her to lift again. Daniel looked at the collar. Its lights pulsed slowly in rhythm with her heartbeat. He touched his scanner to it once more. Instantly, the screen filled with unknown code, symbols that twisted and changed too quickly to read. He had never seen anything like it. His equipment beeped and then went dark, almost as if the collar had rejected the scan. The girl gasped and clutched at the collar, her eyes wide with fear. She shook her head, her mouth forming a single desperate sound. "No." Daniel froze. She had spoken in his language. Only one word, but clear. His stomach turned. How could she know even that much? He stared at her, questions burning in his mind. But before he could speak, she winced in pain. Her leg bled slowly into the sand. The wound was serious. Without help, she would not survive the night. Daniel reached into his pack and pulled out a small medical kit. He opened it, showing her the tools, the bandages, the spray for infection. He raised his eyebrows, trying to show her he wanted to heal, not harm. She watched him with distrust, but after a long moment, her grip on the collar loosened. She gave the smallest nod. Daniel moved carefully, kneeling beside her injured leg. The cut was deep, burned around the edges as if from fire. He cleaned it with the spray. The girl flinched, a sharp cry escaping her lips. He worked quickly, wrapping the wound in white bandages. When it was done, she lay back, exhausted but calmer. For the first time, her hand fell away from the collar. Daniel's eyes went to it again. It was black and silver, smooth but alive with faint energy. Tiny lights blinked like stars trapped inside. It seemed to hum softly, not with sound but with a vibration he felt in his chest. He wanted to touch it, to know its secret, but something stopped him. The memory of her eyes, the way she had cried when he tried to scan it. The girl looked at him now with something new in her gaze. Not trust, not yet, but less fear. She raised her hand slowly, touching his chest right above his heart. Her fingers were cold, trembling. Then she tapped her collar and shook her head. Daniel frowned. Was she warning him? Telling him not to use it? Not to remove it? Or was she begging him to protect it? Before he could ask, a strange sound broke the silence, a hum in the distance. Engines. Daniel stiffened. He turned his head toward the horizon. Lights moved through the purple dusk, dull red lights hovering low above the ground. Patrol drones. Human drones. The girl's eyes widened. She grabbed his arm suddenly, her fingers tight. She whispered something fast in her own language, fear breaking her voice. Daniel understood nothing of her words, but he understood the fear. She was terrified of the drones. His mind raced. If the drones saw her, they would kill her instantly. She was the enemy, according to command. They would not ask questions. They would not see an injured girl. Only a target. Daniel looked at her collar again. Maybe that was why she was hiding. Maybe that collar carried something the drones were searching for. The humming grew louder. The red lights drew nearer. The girl clutched Daniel's arm tighter, her violet eyes begging him silently. He felt his heart pound. He had a choice again. He could walk away, leave her to the drones, and stay loyal to command. Safe, clean, no questions, or he could hide her. Protect her, and risk everything, the girl whispered again. And this time he caught a single word, broken and weak but clear enough to cut deep into his heart. Please. Daniel swallowed hard. He looked at the glowing collar one last time, then at the drones moving closer, closer. Without another thought, he scooped her into his arms, She was light, weaker than he imagined. She gasped but held onto his neck. Daniel ran. The desert wind whipped around him, the red dust rising with every step. Behind him, the drones scanned the land, their red eyes sweeping across the rocks. One passed over the crash site. Another turned toward him. The collar on the girl's neck blinked fast as if sensing danger. For a moment, Daniel thought he heard voices again, whispers inside his mind. Then they were gone, drowned by the sound of his own heartbeat. He slid down behind a ridge of black stone, pressing his back to the rock, holding the girl close. The drone lights passed overhead, humming low. Daniel held his breath. The girl trembled in his arms, her face pressed against his chest. The collar pulsed against him, almost alive. The drones hovered for a long moment. Then slowly they drifted away, back toward the horizon. Silence returned. Daniel exhaled, his body shaking. He looked down at the girl. She looked back at him, her eyes shining with tears. The silent girl had not spoken many words. But Daniel knew now. She carried a secret so big that even his own people would kill to erase it. And now, he was part of it. The night had fallen over the alien desert. The two suns were gone and the sky was heavy with stars. Daniel sat close to the black rocks, the alien girl resting against him. She was weak, drifting in and out of sleep, but her hand still touched the collar every few minutes as if afraid it might disappear. Daniel stared at it. That strange object had almost given them away when the drones came. Its light still blinked softly, steady like a heartbeat. It wasn't just metal. It felt alive. He touched his helmet screen, checking the signals around them. The drones had moved farther away, safe for now. But he knew they would come back. Command always wanted proof. They always searched until nothing was left alive. His eyes went back to the collar. What was it hiding? Why would this girl protect it more than her own life? Daniel reached into his pack and pulled out a portable scanner, smaller than the one he had used earlier. He hesitated, remembering how she had reacted before. But if he didn't understand this collar, they were both in danger. He whispered, "I need to know." Slowly, carefully, he held the scanner near the collar. At first, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the collar pulsed with light. The alien girl's eyes flew open. She gasped, trying to push his hand away, but the device had already activated something. A beam of light burst from the collar, projecting into the air. Daniel froze. A hologram shimmered before him. At first, it was only static, blue and white lines dancing. Then the image sharpened. Daniel's breath caught. He saw soldiers, human soldiers. The hologram showed them marching into an alien village. The houses were small, glowing with soft lights. Children ran, screaming as humans fired their weapons. Buildings collapsed. Fires spread. The alien girl's people fell one by one. Some tried to fight, but their weapons were too weak. The humans were ruthless, their faces cold, their armor shining with the emblem of Earth Command. Daniel's stomach twisted. He had been told aliens were the attackers. He had been told humans were defending themselves, but this was slaughter. The hologram changed again. Now it showed a family, the alien girl's family. Daniel recognized her in the vision, smaller, younger, standing between two taller figures, maybe her parents. They tried to run, but soldiers grabbed them. Her mother screamed. Her father fought. Both were cut down in front of her. Daniel's chest tightened. He turned to the girl beside him. She was trembling, tears sliding down her blue cheeks, glowing faintly in the dark. Her eyes never left the hologram. The image flickered again. Now he saw something else. Earth commanders giving orders. Cold voices, clear words. Eliminate all resistance. Erase all witnesses. No survivors. Daniel dropped the scanner. The hologram died, fading back into the collar. The desert was silent again, but inside him everything was loud. He shook his head. "Nope, this can't be true. They wouldn't." His words broke. But deep inside he knew. He had seen enough to recognize the armor, the voices, the emblems. It was real. The alien girl clutched the collar with both hands, pressing it to her chest as if it was her heart. She looked at him with eyes full of pain and something else, hope. As if she needed him to believe. Daniel stared at her. His mind was torn apart. His whole life he had served command. He believed he was protecting humanity. But now, here in the cold desert night, he had seen the truth. They were not heroes. They were destroyers. The girl whispered something in her own language. The words were soft, broken, but her tone was clear. She wanted him to understand. Daniel pressed his hand against his chest. "I saw it," he said quietly. "I believe you." The girl blinked, her tears falling faster. She reached out, touching his hand, her fingers weak but warm. Daniel felt anger rising inside him. Anger at the lies he had been told, at the horrors hidden behind orders. But along with the anger came fear. If this collar carried the truth, then Earth Command would stop at nothing to destroy it, and they would stop at nothing to destroy her. Daniel looked at the stars above. Somewhere out there, ships of Earth Command were watching, hunting. If they found him with this girl, with this evidence, he would be branded a traitor. But if he left her here, the truth would die with her. He looked at her again. She was watching him closely, as if reading his soul. Her lips trembled and she whispered one word, soft, broken, but now familiar. "Help." Daniel's heart clenched. He nodded slowly. "I will." The girl closed her eyes, leaning against him. The collar dimmed, as if resting after showing its burden. Daniel sat in the darkness, his mind racing. He had just seen the hidden message, the truth buried inside the collar. And he knew one thing for certain. The secret would change everything. The desert was quiet, but Daniel's mind was a storm. He could not forget the images he had seen in the collar's hologram. Human soldiers burning villages, children screaming, parents dying in front of their families, orders from commanders he once trusted. No survivors. Daniel pressed his hands against his helmet, trying to block the pictures, but they kept replaying. He wanted to deny it, to believe it was fake, a trick by the alien girl. But deep down he knew the truth. He had seen the armor, the insignia, the voices of men he had heard before. It was real. The alien girl leaned weakly against him, her breath soft, her violet eyes heavy with exhaustion. She held the collar close as if it was her last protection. Her face was young, innocent, and broken. Daniel whispered almost to himself, "They told us you were the enemy. They told us you attacked first." His voice shook. "But it was us." The girl's eyes lifted to his. She did not speak, but her tears answered. Daniel looked away, ashamed. He had believed in Earth Command all his life. He had fought for them, killed for them. Every mission, every order he had followed without question, because he thought he was protecting humanity. But now he realized he had been protecting lies. The girl touched his wrist, gentle and trembling. She pointed to the stars again, the same motion she had made before. Daniel followed her gesture, staring up at the endless sky. "What are you showing me?" he asked softly. She moved her hand from the stars to the collar, tapping it weakly. Then she pointed to herself. Finally, she touched his chest. Her eyes locked onto his, glowing faintly. Daniel tried to understand. Was she telling him she carried the truth? That it was now his responsibility too? The thought made his stomach twist. If he carried this truth, he was no longer a soldier. He was no longer part of command. He would be hunted like her. But if he left her, if he left the collar behind, he could return to his people and pretend none of this ever happened. Safe. Clean. Blind. He looked at her again. She was watching him, silently pleading. Daniel's heart ached. He wanted to run from this responsibility, but he couldn't. Not after what he had seen. Not after seeing her family die in the hologram. The night grew colder. The alien girl shivered against him. Daniel pulled his pack closer and wrapped a thermal sheet around her shoulders. She looked surprised, but then relaxed, her eyes softening. He whispered, "You shouldn't trust me. I was one of them." The girl tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she reached out and touched his face just for a second. A simple gesture. Forgiveness or hope. Daniel's chest tightened. For the first time in years, he felt his eyes burn. He turned away, ashamed of his tears. Suddenly, a distant roar broke the silence. Engines. Not drones this time. Something bigger. Ships. Daniel looked at the horizon. Faint lights glowed in the distance, moving fast. His communicator buzzed in his helmet. "Unit 7, report status," came the cold voice of his commander. Daniel froze. His throat went dry. He had to answer. If he stayed silent, they would know something was wrong. He pressed his communicator. "This is Daniel. I'm still searching. No sign of survivors." The lie burned his tongue, but he said it anyway. "Good," the commander replied. "Continue search. Remember, eliminate all alien presence. Understood? Daniel's hand shook. He stared at the alien girl beside him. She was watching him with wide eyes as if she could hear every word. His mouth felt dry, but he forced the words out. Understood. The channel closed. Silence returned, but Daniel felt heavier than before. He had just lied to his own people. He had crossed the line. The girl whispered something softly. He couldn't understand the words, but he understood her look. She knew what he had done. She knew he had chosen her, at least for now. Daniel sat back against the cold rock, his mind racing. The broken truth was now his burden. He thought about his past missions, the villages he had destroyed, the aliens he had killed. Had they all been innocent? Had he been murdering people who were only defending their homes? The guilt hit him like a wave. He buried his face in his hands. For the first time, he hated the uniform he wore, the emblem on his chest. The girl placed her small hand on his arm again. She whispered a single word in broken English, her voice trembling but clear. Good. Daniel looked at her, confused. Good? She pointed at him, then touched the collar and then her heart. She repeated softly, Good. Daniel felt his throat tighten. She was telling him she believed in him. She still saw good in him, even after everything humans had done. Tears filled his eyes. He looked away, but he couldn't hide the shaking of his shoulders. The broken truth had left him in pieces. But in her eyes, he still had a chance to choose differently. Above them, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere out there, Earth Command was preparing to erase everything. Daniel wiped his tears and stared at the horizon. He had a decision to make. Would he continue to obey his commanders and destroy what was left of her people? Or would he betray everything he once believed and fight for the truth? The girl leaned against him, her breathing soft and weak. Daniel placed a hand on the collar, feeling its faint pulse. He whispered to himself, voice heavy with both fear and resolve. This truth can't stay buried. Not anymore. The night closed in around them, and with it the weight of a choice that could change the future of two worlds. The night stretched on, long and heavy. The desert was cold now, its wind cutting like knives. Daniel sat against the rocks, holding his weapon tight, his eyes on the horizon. The alien girl slept beside him, her head resting weakly on his arm. Her collar glowed faintly, the tiny lights pulsing like a heartbeat. Daniel couldn't sleep. His mind was burning. He saw two paths in front of him. One was clear, simple, safe, follow orders, call command, let them take the girl, destroy the collar. He would be a loyal soldier. He would live. The other path was dark, dangerous, unknown. Protect her. Protect the truth inside the collar. It would make him a traitor. It would make him hunted. Maybe even dead. He closed his eyes, trying to push the thoughts away. But the images from the collar's hologram returned. The burning villages, the children crying, the girl's family dying in front of her. He heard again the cold voice of his commander. No survivors. Daniel's fists clenched. He opened his eyes. He couldn't unsee it. He couldn't go back to believing the lies. The girl stirred beside him. Her eyes fluttered open, violet and glowing faintly in the starlight. She looked up at him, tired but alert. Her lips moved, whispering something in her own language. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the feeling. She was asking him, what now? Daniel swallowed hard. I don't know, he whispered back. The girl reached for the collar and pressed it. The lights blinked faster and another hologram flickered to life. This time it was not an image of war. It was a map, a star chart. Daniel leaned forward, staring. Points of light glowed across the black sky, lines connecting them. One point pulsed brighter than the others. A hidden location, coordinates. The girl pointed at the pulsing light. Then she pointed at herself. Finally, she touched his chest. Her eyes begged him to understand. Daniel's breath caught. It's where your people are. Isn't it? The girl nodded weakly. Daniel's stomach tightened. He understood what this meant. The collar didn't just hold memories of destruction. It held the location of survivors. Refugees. The last of her kind. And if command found out, they would wipe them out, just like the others. The girl's fingers gripped his arm. She whispered one word, broken but clear enough to pierce through the night. Save. Daniel's chest ached. He looked at the map again. He knew what command would want him to do. He knew what would happen if he turned this information over. The refugees would die. and he would live with their blood on his hands. He turned his gaze back to the girl. She was watching him, her eyes wide, filled with fear and hope. She was trusting him with the fate of her people. Daniel looked away, staring at the dark horizon. His communicator crackled suddenly. "Unit 7, report," came the commander's voice, cold, demanding. "Any findings?" Daniel's hand shook. His mouth went dry. He looked at the girl, at the collar, at the star map still glowing in the air. He pressed the communicator button slowly. "Negative," he said, his voice steady but hollow. "Nothing here. Just wreckage." There was a pause. Then the commander's voice returned. "Keep searching. We want every corner of that sector cleared. Understood?" Daniel forced himself to answer. "Understood." The channel closed. Silence returned. But Daniel's heart was loud, pounding like drums. He had lied again. For the second time. And each lie pulled him farther away from the soldier he once was. The girl reached for his hand. Her fingers were trembling, but she squeezed weakly. Her eyes glistened. She knew what he had done. She knew he had chosen her. Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to tell her he wasn't strong enough, that he wasn't a hero. But he stayed silent. The map flickered and disappeared, leaving only the dark collar light. Daniel leaned back, staring at the stars. He felt the weight of his choice pressing down on him. He thought of the future. If he went with her, he would become an enemy of his own people, hunted, marked. Every soldier, every drone, every ship would be against him. But if he turned her in, he would destroy the last hope of an entire race. There was no middle path. Daniel closed his eyes, his jaw tight. He whispered to himself, "I can't let them kill more innocents. Not again." When he opened his eyes, the girl was still watching him. She didn't need words. She already knew his answer. Daniel stood, pulling her gently to her feet. She was weak, but she leaned against him. He tightened the strap of his pack, lifted his weapon, and looked to the horizon. "We're going," he said firmly. "To your people. To the truth." The girl blinked, tears sliding down her cheeks. But this time she smiled faintly. Daniel knew his choice would cost him everything. His career, his loyalty, his home, maybe even his life. But for the first time he felt something different. Something he hadn't felt in years. Freedom. The desert wind rose, carrying the sound of distant engines. Command was searching. Time was running out. Daniel held the girl close and started walking into the night. His choice was made, and there would be no turning back. The desert stretched endlessly before them. Daniel supported the alien girl as they moved through the cold night. Her steps were slow, her body weak, but her will pushed her forward. The collar on her neck glowed faintly, guiding them through the dark like a tiny star. Daniel kept glancing at the sky. He knew patrol ships would return soon. He could already hear faint roars above, the hum of engines searching for survivors. Every moment was dangerous. The girl stumbled. Daniel caught her, steadying her on her feet. Her face was pale, her breath shallow. He could feel how close she was to collapse. "You need to rest," he whispered. She shook her head, pressing her hand to the collar. Then she pointed to the stars, to the hidden coordinates she had shown him before. Refugees, survivors, her people. Daniel sighed. "We'll get there, I promise." But deep inside he wasn't sure. She was getting weaker with every step. They stopped at a rocky ridge for shelter. Daniel set her down gently, wrapping the thermal sheet around her. He gave her water from his pack. She drank only a little, her hands shaking, then pushed the bottle away. Her violet eyes locked onto him. She lifted her trembling fingers and touched his chest again, just as she had done before. Then she touched the collar. Daniel frowned.
"What are you trying to tell me?"
She took a deep breath, her voice thin, broken. "You take." Daniel's eyes widened. He shook his head quickly. No, you need it." "It's yours," the girl shook her head. Her tears shimmered in the starlight. "You. Strong, you. Go." Daniel's chest tightened. He understood. She knew she wouldn't survive. And she wanted him to carry the collar. She wanted him to carry the truth. He grabbed her hands, shaking his head again. "No, you're going to live. I'm not leaving you." The girl smiled faintly, the saddest smile he had ever seen. She whispered something in her own language, soft like a lullaby. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. "Goodbye." "No," Daniel said sharply, his voice breaking. He clenched her hands tighter. "Don't you dare give up." But her strength was fading. Her body trembled. She reached up slowly, her fingers brushing her collar. The device responded, glowing brighter as if alive. Daniel's scanner beeped suddenly without him touching it. The collar was transferring something. A pulse of light spread across his chest, his pack, his helmet. Files, memories, maps, voices. Everything inside the collar was being copied into his systems. The girl gasped softly, her eyes locked on his. She whispered one last word in broken English. "Please." Daniel felt tears burning his eyes. He pulled her close, his arms around her fragile body. "I'll do it," he whispered fiercely. "I swear. I'll protect it. I'll protect them." The collar blinked one last time, then went dark. Its hum faded into silence. The girl's hand slipped from his chest, falling to her lap. Her eyes fluttered closed. Her breathing slowed softer and softer until there was nothing left. Daniel froze, holding her, waiting for another breath, but it never came. A heavy silence fell over the desert. Only the wind moved, carrying the dust across the rocks. Daniel's chest shook. He lowered his head, his tears falling onto her silver hair. She had carried the truth all. He whispered, "Why me?" His voice cracked. "Why did you trust me?" There was no answer, only the stillness of her body in his arms. Daniel sat there for a long time, his heart breaking. He had lost many lives in battle, but this loss cut deeper than all the others. She had been more than an alien, more than an enemy. She had been proof that humanity had become the real monsters, and she had trusted him to make it right. The sound of engines broke his grief. Bright red lights scanned the horizon. Command patrols were closing in again. Daniel clenched his jaw. Slowly, he laid the girl's body down on the sand, wrapping her gently in the thermal sheet. He pressed his forehead to hers one last time, whispering, "Rest now. I'll carry it for you." He rose to his feet, his eyes burning with both grief and resolve. The collar was dark now, but its data lived inside him, inside his pack. The truth was his burden. The patrol lights swept closer. Daniel tightened his grip on his weapon. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a traitor to command, a protector of the truth, and he had made a promise. The girl had given him her final gift, her trust, her hope, her story. Now it was his turn to keep it alive. Daniel turned toward the dark horizon, away from the patrols, toward the hidden stars where the refugees waited. His legs were heavy, his chest broken, but his steps were firm. Every tear, every memory, every secret she had carried now burned inside him, and he swore to himself he would not fail her. Daniel walked through the endless desert, his boots heavy against the sand. Behind him the night carried silence, broken only by the fading hum of patrol engines. Ahead of him the horizon stretched into darkness toward the hidden stars where the girl's people waited. But Daniel's heart was broken. He had left her body behind, wrapped in the thermal sheet. He had wanted to bury her, but there had been no time. The patrols were closing in. He had whispered his promise and walked away, his chest burning with grief. Now every step felt heavier than the last. The collar no longer glowed, but its secret lived inside his systems, the holograms, the maps, the screams, the truth, and her final word, "Please." Daniel's throat tightened at the memory. She had asked him for one thing, to carry her story. And now that story was his burden. He reached a canyon and slipped into its shadows, hiding from the patrol lights that swept across the sky. The walls around him echoed with silence. For a moment he leaned against the stone, his body trembling. He wanted to fall to his knees. He wanted to scream. But instead tears slid silently down his face, tears he hadn't allowed himself to shed in years. He whispered into the empty canyon, "I should have saved you. I should have done more." His voice broke, swallowed by the stone, but then he remembered her smile, the faint, sad smile before she gave him the collar. She hadn't asked him to save her. She had asked him to save the others, to save the truth. Daniel wiped his face roughly, standing straighter. His grief was fire now, burning into determination. He checked his pack. The data transfer was complete. The collar's recordings lived inside. Images of the massacre, the commander's voices, the map of the refugees' hiding place, evidence that could expose everything, but evidence meant nothing if it never reached anyone. Daniel stared at the night sky. Somewhere out there, his own people waited to kill him. Somewhere else, the girl's people waited to be saved. And somewhere deeper, a universe waited for the truth. He tightened his grip on his weapon and kept moving. By dawn, the desert was glowing red with light. Daniel's body was exhausted, but his mind stayed sharp. He found a narrow cave and slipped inside, finally allowing himself a moment to rest. Inside the cave, he activated the collar's files again. Holograms filled the dark space, the burning villages, the soldiers' cruelty, the star map. The girl's family appeared again, alive only in memory. Daniel sank to the ground, his chest aching. He reached out as if he could touch them, but the hologram flickered, untouchable. His eyes filled again. "Your story won't die," he whispered. "Not while I live." His communicator suddenly crackled. "Unit 7 respond. We've tracked your position. Report immediately." Daniel froze. They were close. Too close. He looked at the hologram one last time, then shut it down. He knew what command would do if they caught him. They would erase him, erase the caller's truth, erase the girl's sacrifice. And that was something he could never allow. By nightfall, Daniel reached the edge of the desert. Ahead lay mountains, sharp and black against the stars. Somewhere beyond those mountains were the coordinates, the refugees, the last hope of her people. His legs ached, his throat dry, but he pushed on, and then as he climbed a ridge, he stopped. On the horizon, lights appeared. Ships. Not patrol drones this time. Full carriers. Earth Command was coming in force. They were moving toward the same stars the girl had pointed to. They knew, somehow they knew. Daniel's blood ran cold. If they reached the refugees first, it would be another massacre. He dropped to his knees, his chest heavy with despair. The secret weighed like stone inside him. How could one man stop an army? But then he remembered her voice. Good. He remembered her touch on his chest, her trust in him, and her final word. Please. Daniel clenched his fists, his tears falling freely. I won't let them take everything. Not again. He rose to his feet, his grief burning into resolve. He wasn't just carrying evidence anymore. He was carrying her hope, her people's last chance. He had no army, no allies, no plan. But he had the truth. And sometimes truth was the most dangerous weapon of all. Daniel moved quickly now, every step filled with fire. His body screamed with exhaustion, but his heart pushed him forward. He knew he might die. He knew he might fail. But he also knew something else. He was no longer just a soldier of Earth Command. He was the keeper of the collar, the bearer of the secret, and he swore that when his story ended, the universe would know the truth. The stars above watched in silence as Daniel disappeared into the mountains. Behind him lay the body of the girl who had trusted him. Ahead of him lay war, betrayal, and sacrifice. But in his heart, her voice still lived, her plea, her gift, her secret. And with tears burning in his eyes, Daniel whispered into the night, I'll carry it. For you, for all of you. The desert gave no answer, but the stars seemed to burn brighter. The choice was made. The truth would live on, even if it cost him everything.